Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown, slightly delayed by virtue of venue availability. So it's the Tuesday night breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to look back over
hang on. My venue's been available throughout.
Well, yeah, it wasn't required. That's the problem. Don't get me into that Kieran Achara talk now. The playoff semi-finals, 2 legs, Bristol Flyers and London Lions, Glasgow Rocks and Leicester Riders. So let's get into them. We'll do them in chronological order, as is our usual way. So Friday night, Bristol Flyers 83, London Lions 85. And well, I actually, because you couldn't be bothered to look up any five information, I did look up the starting fives of the teams over the course of the season. And London were second only to Surrey in terms of their different starting lineups. They had 14 different lineups in the league, 20 in all BBL competitions. This game they went with Rees, Cugini, Washburn, Martin, and Tawia, a 5 that had not started together until late April, but has been their 5 of recent weeks. And they were 10-0 down after 2.5 minutes. Thomas Edwards with a dunk from the opening tip, Josh Rogers a couple of threes, Del Pesha dunk, and Bristol started well.
Yeah, just on that comment about not being bothered to look it up. I mean, I appreciate that. You know, maybe over the course of this year, the content of this podcast has gone from kind of it more from the informational side of it to the opinion side of it, just as the axis is kind of up and down.
Yeah.
Because eventually you run out of information, I think, and I don't think. And I'm pretty hopeful I'm not going to run out of opinions. So that was a throwaway comment, but it was also half true. That was a great start. That was a top start because it really pins and puts a finger on everything that's going on. I think the last thing I said about London last week was that they had to get out of their own way. And you've got your best player who's not starting, or the best player of the season, Dirk Williams, who's played now 3 or 4 games back. He's not starting. And it's like, whoosh, mind explodes, he has to start. You got Dirk Williams, you're going to take, there's 10 minutes of the game he's not going to play because he's not playing the first 5 minutes of each half. That's 30 minutes. He's down from 40 to 30 already. Really? Then he has to have a rest. So no way. And the whole Tawia Kelly thing is just weird to me. Absolutely weird, because Rees is absolutely synergetic with Kelly. It just really is. It's your Stockton to Malone of the BBL this year. Maybe that's actually probably Crandon Nelson Henry, but who dunked more than Malone? Anyway, somebody like that, a dunker. Just throw it up there and go and get it. Nash the Stoudemire, that's who it is. Anyway, so I'm going back at time now. And not having Kelly on at the start, given all the, I understand maybe you want to keep him out of foul trouble, whatever, but hang on, it's the playoffs.
I kind of get the logic behind it, but you're increasing the chances of him not being on court with Rees by not starting him, because Rees might come off at the point which that he comes on, and those two are, as you say, they make each other better.
Yeah, I mean, and for that reason, I don't get the logic of it. Just maximize the amount of time your best lineups are on the court. And those two are the best and have been. And Rees has gone up and down, and Kelly at times has gone up and down, but at 7'1", you expect that. The point guard, you probably want them to be a little bit more steady over the year. But nevertheless, there is just such a massive difference. I think they call it a vertical threat in the NBA. Kelly has it, Tawia doesn't. Tawia has a big body, he can knock around with people. But you take that vertical threat away from London, then it becomes so much easier to guard them. No, I mean, I didn't.
And against Bristol as well, because Bristol have guys like Tawia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you got your Del Pesh plays his 4 minutes, and Simmons comes in. And, ultimately, it's towards the end of the year, you're in the biggest games of the season in theory, because of the last games of the season. That's all that's left. Put your guys on the court, let them play. They're your guy. How many guys you got? You got 7 or 8 you're going to play. Play the one, get your minutes right. Play the ones that need to play. And if they get into foul trouble, they get into foul trouble. you know, but it's, you know, what are you waiting for, you know? You know, if you're not playing them, then it's the same as being in foul trouble. They can't impact the game from the bench. So, you know, I didn't get that, and I thought they paid for it because Bristol, as we've said now repeatedly, this is becoming a lot of repetition in this show. Start off, it seemed to start off very, very well in Housing.
We're only 2 weeks away from having a whole new load of repetition next season.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Actually, we can start all over again. Same points, different players. Yeah, and Bristol start off, and Rodgers makes his shots early, and they get the shots that they used to get because they run their sets quite well early. I mean, Bristol aren't exactly, you know, innocent of all of this either, because they're bringing Jacob off the bench. You know, and Jacob who's arguably been the most consistent game in, game out player all season, and suddenly that's 3 or 4 games he's disappeared to the bench. And I think it's difficult to do that right at the end of a season. You know, to have a player who has been starting all year, and then suddenly, you know, a few weeks before the end, you know, so, excuse me, so we're bringing you off the bench now, and it's like that's a different rule, it's a different situation. So you're asking a player to make a big adjustment, and that's a rookie, you know, and so that's a big thing. And so I don't, you know, I think the best
to be fair to him, because Reece had got the Lions back into the game at 15-13. When he did come off the bench, he brought them some instant offense, and they had a 10-0 run again and went back out to 25-13.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he's going to, because he's a good player. You know, so you have your good players on the court, and your good players. When you have your good players on the court, good things happen. And obviously they started off well without him, and then he gave them the boost. So coach would say, "That's great. That's worked exactly the way I wanted it." But if you're trying to, my perspective on this is, at some part of the season, you've got to make a judgment as to who your guys are best playing with, and what rules are they best in. Now, London haven't made that judgment all season, other than the fact that Reece is our point guard, and even Dirk now, is on the bench. You know, so apart from Reece is our point guard, I haven't seen. You couldn't say London being consistent in any way in determining that. Bristol have had injuries, so they've had to make do amend at times. So I understand that. But if Jacob is going to be the fulcrum point of your second unit, you would like to have more than 2 or 3 games for your second unit to be together with him. Why is he doing that? You know, because otherwise it's just a question of throwing bodies on the court. So whereas you look at Leicester, we know who Leicester's second unit is. I think if you go back through all the exceptional teams in BBL history, you will know who their starting 5 were, and you'll know who was coming off the bench. You know, and because consistency.
That goes back to that stat again. Leicester had 3 starting 5s in the entire league campaign. One of them was when Gino was out for 1 game and Connor started. And then the only other change was when Nelson Henry got injured early on, and then Walker started, and then when Nelson Henry got back to full fitness, he went back into the starting lineup. Yeah,
and there's no issue. So everybody, so it's so much easier because you can get your guys to buy into that. And if they're not going to buy into it, you can figure out, well, you know, something has to happen. But they've all bought into a rule that they have. And the biggest thing in the BBL over every season is establishing in your own mind what you've got in your team, how they are best utilized, and getting the players to buy into that. Because not everybody can have the ball all the time. And so, you know, as the late season changes, you know, bringing very, very good players off the bench, like Kelly, Williams, Jacob, it kind of doesn't sit that well with us. I just think, you know, you would want to do that earlier and make sure that player knows that's what he's required to do. But anyway, as I say, we kind of worked for Bristol. It didn't work for London. And I thought London in the first half of this game, again, they didn't get out of their own way. Their lineups were all over the place. They played 4 centers. Kelly played 9 minutes. And they were lucky not to be further behind at half time.
That's exactly what I've got written here. To me, and it just felt like Bristol had a real opportunity here, and they were on top and they didn't get away. And then Dirk hit a couple of late threes and Kajini hit one. And it's 39-39 at half time. And I think I tweeted out, if I was London, I'd be super happy where I am right now. Because...
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at it, and look, Reece was locked in that game, right? And he's got the kind of he's like the Formula One driver, you know, on the last lap. or the 400 meter or the 800 meter run who's just heard the bell. You know, he's thinking finishing line, you know, back on a plane, get home, big game beforehand, maybe on the TV, maybe get myself a contract, big contract somewhere next year, etc. So suddenly he's back. So whilst he knew they weren't going to win the league for the past 3 months, he's been on and off mentally, up and down. Well, in that game, he was anything but. And I think you know they had Jordan Williams started the second quarter, I think, in this game. I don't know if you noticed, but Reece basically subbed Jordan Williams off. I don't know if you saw it on the coverage.
I didn't notice that.
Because Kelly hadn't played it at all. And I think Reece tried to throw the ball to Jordan Williams in the horn set right up top. And the ball was just knocked out of his hand and they went down the other end for a dunk, transition dunk, just on the first pass. And Reece immediately beckoned, was pointing at the bench. And then the next play, I think the ball went out of bounds and Reece was said something which I took to mean get him, as in take him off, put Kelly on. And it just seemed that he was not playing, if I can put it that way. He was not, sorry, I mean, not, he was playing the game. His attitude, he wasn't playing with, he wasn't messing around with people. He was all business, you know? And that's about 4 minutes to go in the second quarter, because I think I just tweeted, where's Kelly? Because he played 4 minutes in the first quarter, dunked a couple, blocked a couple, and then sat down and wasn't back into the 4 minutes in the second quarter. But with all those shooters, they always have a chance of staying close in the game if they get something going. And Bristol blew the chance in the first half, I thought.
And if we carry on with the repeats of things we say every week, Bristol started the third quarter well, got themselves ahead, but then Cugini, Reece, Washburn, as you say, if they've got the shooters, they start knocking down shots. 11-0 run put them 51-56 up. Again, the Flyers came back at it, and this was the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. It was the Flyers would have a run. They had a 9-0 spell to go ahead, and then end of the third quarter, Reece 3-point play, Washburn 3 to start the fourth quarter. Lions with the momentum, 14 points in a row, and they were 60-70 up, and that's the point where Bristol can go one or two ways from there.
Yeah, I think they started Towie again the second half. He lasted about 2 minutes before Kelly come in. And at that point, I'm thinking, why? You know, if he's only going to play, if the first time it goes wrong, well, just put the guy in the game. He is the best centre, so he really should be playing the majority of the minutes unless foul trouble is otherwise. And so they're handicapping themselves there. And there were times that Taboza struggled a bit in this game because it was in playoffs, decision making becomes more important than effervescence, if you know what I mean. And his energy's been high, which has helped them get through the last few weeks when it's not exactly been consistent across the team. And he's kind of stepped up. And now you're in decision making time whereby if you drive and put your head down, if you turn the ball over twice and they run the other way twice, that can be the game. So they didn't get much out of him in this game. And eventually, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, they went to the lineup that they needed to be at, which I talked about last week, and I tweeted about it again. Because I don't think Williams and Cugini had played a minute together in the first half. I might be wrong. But eventually, they came up with Reece, Washburn, Cugini, Williams, and Kelly, I think. And from memory, that lineup, which we've talked all year, is offensively pretty much unguardable. Insofar as taking away shots from everybody. You can't take away a shot from everybody. The guy you probably give a shot up to is Washburn, but he's shown if you're giving him shots, he'll knock him down. That lineup went on a run. The tweet which said lineups, and anybody who follows me who doesn't know anything about basketball probably thinks I'm kind of slightly nuts. But it's what it was. And Bristol, actually, as you say, Bristol could have gone two ways, but Bristol have got a lot of oomph. They've had a lot of oomph all season. They have arguably overachieved in what they've done. So that's a credit to them. That's not a criticism, that's a credit. And part of that has been that they've been relentless. That's your Thomas Edwards, kind of your Rogers and the Americans attacking as well. Delpeche on the glass and Simmons on the glass. So they've always been physical and they've been relentless. and they stayed with it.
Yeah. Evans had 6 points, and Thomas Edwards had a couple of scores. They got 11 in a row, got back in front 71-70. And then Cugini 2 threes, Washburn a 3. Lions up 8 with 2 minutes to go, and Bristol in real danger, because if you're going to 8 points is a lot. I know people overcome it and blah blah blah, but 8 points is a lot. It's a lot in a two-legged game. But London, I thought, messed up the last 2 minutes.
I thought it didn't. I thought from memory, and I'm trying careful not to juxtapose two games here, but I'm pretty sure that they changed again in relation to the guys that they had finishing the game. I think maybe they brought Martin in.
Yeah. So the first
and they slid Washburn to the 3.
Let's go play by play, because we can pick it up on that. So it's 77. 75-83 with 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Evans comes down court in a sort of semi-transition, sees Martin right in front of him and says, "I'll have a piece of that." Blows right past him. Kelly can't really help out, and it's an easy layup, 77-83 with 1:50 to go. They come the other way. It's a high pick and roll for Reese. He turns the ball over. Flyers out on the break, gets fouled. Dale Pesh 1 for 2, which is as good as you can hope for, really, with him out on the break there. 78-83 with 1:28 to go. Evans almost forced a turnover on the inbound because they were a bit casual with it. He ends up with a foul against Evans because he dives underneath Reese trying to get it, but it was almost a steal. Lions come down, run the ball, and again, Reese turns it over. I think it was Evans with the steal and a fast break layup, and it's 80-83 with a minute to go.
Yeah, and Reese played a lot of minutes in this game. He hasn't played a lot of minutes. He hasn't played this amount of minutes, I don't think, this season, on a regular basis. And he had an incredible usage rate in this game, because he had points, shots, attempts, assists, turnovers, whatever. Because when you look at it, they had 4 point guards all season. Justin Robinson's injured. Jordan Spencer's left. Andre Lockhart is chained to a bench. So it's just Reese.
Yeah.
And Caboza's not really a point guard, he's a 2 guard, I think. So now they've tied their tassels to Reese's horse, to put it that way. Yeah. And then they're going to ride Reese all the way if they can. That takes a lot out of him, and that's why he was turnover prone, I think, at the end, simply because of the pressure that Bristol put on and having to do it for 40 minutes.
So Lions with
the lack of space. The spacing changes when Washburn plays at the 3.
Yeah,
so it's less from the work.
Lions call a timeout. Obviously, don't advance the ball because they're up 3 with 1 minute and 4 seconds to go. Cugini got a decent look out of it, just doesn't go down for him. Rogers with the defensive rebound with 50 seconds to go. He goes down the other end. Nice little head fake. Washburn bites on it. One dribble off to the right, and he knocks down a big shot to tie the game with 36 seconds to go.
Yeah, and at this point, you really should be jumping up and down in excitement, shouldn't you? Except it's 40 minutes and 36 seconds to go, so who really cares? It's one possession either way, which is going to be overrun by the 100-odd possessions in the next game. So that kind of is a little bit frustrating. But I've been there, I've argued that before. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, this is what Bristol have been all year. They've been. I think you put the stat up on Sunday. They've had the most close games by a mile. There's a reason.
18 of them.
There's a reason for that. It means that you haven't quite got the ability to put teams away, or the consistency, but you also have the kind of the heart and the mentality not to quit. And so. And this was just another example of it, particularly in their own gym, with those fans, so yeah. And then from memory, London
come down. Washburn gets to the top of the key, knocks down a bit of a fall away, 23 seconds to go, 83-85. And I'm thinking, well, just run the clock, get the last score, take the aggregate out of it by getting the draw, take the maths away from Leicester and Rowe, and we're all good for the second leg. And actually, that's basically what they did. Obviously, didn't advance the ball. Evans brings it forward. it's 4 low. Everybody's on the baseline. He's just dribbling it out. Simmons comes up for the screen with about 9-10 seconds to go. Evans goes round the screen, gets the switch, drives past Kelly, and right there, I'm just thinking, lay it in.
Yeah, and he decides he's going to kick it out for a semi-contested 3.
Well, Thomas Edwards, because I think it was Martin was guarding Thomas Edwards, and he'd come way off him to help on the. But I didn't think he'd get there, that he would be able to stop the basket without a foul. But he kicks it all the way out to Thomas Edwards, and then 2 of them run at him. One of them was definitely Dirk, and I forget who the other one was that ran at him. So he looked wide open when the pass was thrown, but he wasn't quite open when the shot went up.
The only thing about Evans is, Kelly is a shot changer. You know what Kelly's there, and so probably the one guy that you wouldn't just go and lay the ball up against without having little thoughts in your head is Kelly. You're always going to be a little bit more attuned to who's open on the outside when you've got him patrolling the inside. In another day, in another world, in another game, you would be analyzing that to death, wouldn't you? That decision, and you'd be living with it. But ultimately, miss the shot, on the ball, rebound the ball, shake hands, move on.
To be fair, it looked like it was going to drop to Miller, and he might have got a shot away, but then it sort of bobbled away, and nobody really got the ball, and time expired. So London won by 2.
No, hang on. Whoa! We've missed something here. In the week where 74% of the British public indicated that they're aware of Partygate, 41% indicated that they're familiar with Beergate.
20% of Heighgate.
Heighgate, which is a totally invented. I love that. There's 20% of people who are aware of a totally invented scandal involving the Liberal Democrat leader. How many people have we got for 6-man-gate?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
We've got 6-man gate going on here.
I
didn't see it either. I watched it back, and ultimately, it is what it is. The table. I think the table's screwed up. In
deference to the table, and I've spoken to a table official, and had an email from another about this since. The table is supposed to blow the horn if they see it before the game is underway. Once the game is underway, only the referees can stop the game. And what's happened is Samuels has come in to sub, but the person he's guarding, it's a Lions ball right in front of the Flyers bench, so he's just jumped straight there. And Thomas Edwards doesn't realize he's supposed to come off court. Now the referee's job is to see that there are 5 people on court, and then say, or to see 1 on and 1 off. So they've messed up there. I think it's more the referees than the table would be my.
That may be fair.
I totally agree with you in your argument with Pat on Twitter that the London bench should have been going mad as Thomas Edwards jogs off past their bench. Now he also jogs off past Rob Hickman, so he should have seen it as well.
Yeah, exactly what's going on. Yeah, but at that point, can Rob Hickman do anything about it because he's no longer on the court?
I think you can still. But the interesting thing here's the little side thing is I looked up the rules, and there is nothing I could find that says it's a technical for having 6 players on the court. It's always been a technical for having 6 players on the court. I've never known a time when it isn't.
I thought that was
but I couldn't find in the rules, and somebody can send it to me if they can read through them and find where I didn't see it. But I couldn't find anywhere where it says 6 players on the court. Now, one of the points that was made to me is the reason it might not be in the rules because it should never happen, because if there's 6 players on the course, the referees have messed up in the first place that they've allowed the game to go back underway with 6 people on the court.
Well, I've got a clip here I've got an attachment here of a rule. I don't know what the rule is, but it talks about an interpretation 36.5 apparently.
Okay.
It says, assuming that referees and the table officials are doing their job correctly, one player must have re-entered or remained on the playing court illegally. The referees must therefore order one player to leave the playing court immediately and charge a technical foul on the head coach of that.
So that might be in the interpretations, but isn't in the actual rules. So that might be where the hinter is.
But what we will say is ultimately, I'm not entirely on the refs either, because you've got 3 refs, but they've each got a job, they've each got an area of the court to look at. As one's impounding the ball, one's on the wing, one's at the baseline. So not all, and probably one on the baseline is the one who probably should have maybe has a spot at it, but they might be looking at something else in relation to a bit of activity with the player or something. And it was so quick. It was 3 seconds.
And it didn't make any difference to
No, made no
anything.
difference.
So it
No.
was one of those where you could just go, well, no harm, no foul.
No harm done, but
potentially London could have got another point from the free throw line, couldn't they? That would be the thing. But again, when it happened, it was first quarter, wasn't it? It's so far. Nothing that happens then that's valued as 1 point makes a difference to the end of the game, in my view. But I follow the argument, I follow the logic. Anyway, so we'll leave Highgate to where it belongs. Evans with 20 points, 7 of 18 shooting, 1 of 7 from 3, 11 assists, 4 steals, 6 turnovers. Jacob was 16 points, but was a -10, interestingly enough. Rogers 11, Miller 4 of 11 for 10 points. They had 18 points and 18 turnovers, sorry, and 21 London Lions points off that.
What was the 3-point differential?
Gosh, I haven't got Bristol's 3-point shooting down. It was a lot.
I think Bristol maybe shot 4 or something, and London shot 14 or something.
16 of 40. I have got that down. So Reese had 24 points, 9 of 20 shooting, 6 rebounds, 12 assists, and 10 turnovers. So almost a quadruple double. Kajini was 5 of 11 for 3 for 19 points. Washburn had 16 points. I've got the turnover, 19 turnovers, 19 points. So it's pretty much a wash on the turnovers. But the shooting numbers, 15 of 27 from 2 and 16 of 40 from 3. London.
That's where they're most dangerous. That's their strength. They spread the court, let Reese go to work and spread the court with the shooters. I don't see how they can play any other way, but they have to adapt their personnel. They have to use the personnel that can play that way. And they have to do everything they can to maximize space. But that's going to be the thing moving forward. And the moment that they try and muddy it up, I just think they muddy themselves up, just they get in their own way. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, as I say, they've got to get out their own way.
So let's go to Saturday afternoon. Glasgow Rocks 84, Leicester Riders 105. Loving Crandall Whelan threes. Leicester 17-7 up after 5 minutes, and you're already thinking this could be a long afternoon for the Rocks.
Yeah, I mean, difficult to summarize this first game because, it never felt like a fight. It was, never felt like what I would expect in a playoff semi-final. When I say a fight, I mean kind of a physical contest. There was little in the way of anything different from a regular season game, insofar as kind of the what I could see from the mentality of the players. Now, that's a knock on Glasgow. That's not a knock on Leicester, because Leicester wanted to be like a regular season game because they've been destroying teams and that's the way they are. Right? But for Glasgow, you're thinking, well, hang on, we're gonna have to, for me, you have to be thinking, we're gonna have to get up into these guys. We're gonna have to really, kind of a little bit what Plymouth did. That was the way I would have expected it to be. But it's just not in Glasgow's DNA. No. It hasn't been in Glasgow's DNA all season. And you're at the point of the season now whereby you are what you are. Yeah. And I thought, and they are what they are, which is unfortunately the worst, on stats, on points per possession, the worst defensive team in the league. And I'm not sure if they've held Leicester below 100 all season. It certainly didn't over these 2 games either. And it just seemed to be kind of, it was like, if it was America, it was varsity versus JV. But the JV got a lot of talent. And the way they play, are so spiritable and can score in bunches that, with over periods of time in the game, they can play with Leicester. They just didn't have the consistency and also the mentality to guard to do that. So they came back from that, didn't they?
Yeah, they had one of those. They had one of those spurts, a 15-2 run to cut it to 1 point early in the second quarter. Leicester turning the ball over. The offense not quite as smooth as it usually is, and then it stayed somewhere around there. It's 45-43 just before halftime. Jordan Johnson hits a 3 to end the second quarter. Hits another couple of threes to start the third quarter, and Rocks have an 11-point lead early in the third, 54-43.
Yeah, and I mean, this game I thought was the kind of the rehabilitation of Gino. You know, this was the game where actually, you know, as I would have expected in the semi-final, Gino was noticeably doing less talking. He was doing a lot more playing, you know, and he was really, really, really good. He was elite in this game. And actually, it was Leicester bench, which kind of struggled to get any rhythm. So when that run around the second quarter happened, that was more their bench than it was when, you know, Crandall was getting his rest. And the kind of the reason that even when that run you talk, before half time is an interesting one, because I think Gino knocked down a 3 and Jordan Johnson came down the other end and knocked down a 3 on the buzzer. And that was the first time that the game really got my interest, insofar as, oh, hang on a minute. Jordan Johnson hasn't been on the court much. He had 2 fouls, which I think he should have been on the court a bit more. That's another argument. But Jordan Johnson is just, hang on a minute, he's saying, I'm here as well. You know, you're looking for that kind of mano-a-mano thing whereby, you make one, I'm going to come down, I'm going to make one, we're here, we're not going anywhere. And it's just not the DNA. You know, even that, I thought that might kind of trigger something. And it's not. In the beginning of the third quarter, they went on a run. And actually, there was one play which was very un-Leicester-like, where they got 2 or 3 offensive rebounds and missed some threes, and the ball got kicked out again. And you got like Leicester's guys are kind of hanging around in the key, and no one's closing out. And it looked tired, you know, looked like they weren't quite there. And Jordan Johnson knocked down the 3, and that was the 11-point lead. And that kind of got my interest as well, because I'm thinking, you know, Leicester look a little bit it's just not them. They're always recovering. They're always back in transition. They're always recovering out. They're always challenging shots, even if teams make shots. And I think the very next possession, they just ran a little. Gino just threw the ball to, I think, Patrick Whelan for a little flare screen play at the top, which they've run hundreds of times all year. Used to run it last year for Corey Johnson, run it for Patrick. And Glasgow, I think it was Gareth who was caught sagging, and just let Patrick Whelan shoot a rhythm 3. And 11 points became 8, or 9 became 6. And
Crandall and Whelan both hit 3s. They hit 10 in a row, and it went to 59.
It was the nature of those 3s, you know, because you talk about putting your foot in their throats, you know, and you're up 10 or 11. That was your point, and they didn't have it in them to get stops. They didn't have it in them to take away anything from Leicester. Leicester scored 60 plus in the second half. You know, I mean, in the playoff game, that's, you know, it's not great. And from that moment on, you know, as Leicester's defense kind of tightened up a little bit, and more importantly, Glasgow stopped getting stops, so they couldn't run, they couldn't get in transition. And the biggest thing about Leicester's defense all year is their offense. If they are scoring, you are picking the ball out, and they can get set and they are solid. If they are not scoring, that's when you can run a little bit on them, and they're good, but they're not much better than everybody else. It's their offense which allows them to know where the shots are coming from, where everybody's responsibilities are. If Nelson Henry's laying it in, you've got 4 guys back, no one's scoring on you. You know, and if they're shooting 3s and the other guys are back, their floor spacing is pristine offensively, and that impacts their defense. And as they started scoring, it became harder for Glasgow to score. I thought Gino was great, albeit if you'd asked me who was guarding Gino in that game, I wouldn't know, because basically every time they ran a screen that I could see, Glasgow switched it. And you're looking at, and for someone like Gino, that's just absolute manna from heaven, because he's smart enough. He can pick whichever guy he wants to attack. So if it's Vance Johnson, and particularly when he's got the 3-point shot going. So if it's Vance Johnson, he's going to step out and stretch him out. If it's Gareth, they're going to stretch on him. And I was thinking, you can't guard Gino like that. You have to have somebody who's going to get into his grill and try and unsettle him. You know, Harris would probably be the obvious one with his length and his athleticism, but you can't just let him dictate, you know, who's going to guard him and just hope that you can get away with it, because he's too good. And he ended up with 32, 12, 8, 9, whatever it was, just ridiculous numbers. But most importantly, he's comfortable. And if he's comfortable, that impacts upon the rest of the team. because he's comfortable, because he knows he can score, he can get what he wants when he wants. The rest of the team is comfortable because he's comfortable. So there's no negative flow energy flowing down from there. And the only chance you have of beating them, which is effectively to take the head off the snake, which is Gino, and then hope you can deal with the rest when Connor comes in with his, Superman in the telephone box antics, right?
Yeah.
But they never got to first base with that. They never got close to that because of the switching that they were doing. I can't see how that is in a playoff game when you've got to be running off everything and chasing everything. I just can't see how you can say we're going to let the best player in the league decide which of our players we're going to attack. And they did that. And Leicester picked them apart. And if the game had gone another 5 minutes, it would have been 30.
Yeah. So Jackson had 7 in a 9-0 run, got it to double figures for Leicester. Washington McKenzie had 7 points to start the fourth quarter, and then it was just a question of whether Glasgow could hang on in any sort of way in the fourth quarter. And as you say, Crandall just picked them apart, did whatever he wanted. The switching thing was mind-boggling, really.
It wasn't even. They weren't even fighting to avoid switches, was it? It was almost. It was conceding. It was conceding. You're going to be able to dictate to us whatever you do, and that. Yeah, I didn't get it. Just didn't get it at all. No, sorry.
Leicester finished the game with the biggest lead of the game, which is always the best way to end an aggregate first leg.
Long trip back in 105 points.
Yeah,
104 points, 105 points.
105. Yeah.
You can't give up 105 at home in a playoff.
No. Harris had 29 points, 9 of 13 shooting, 8 of 12 from the free throw line. Johnson had 15 points, 5 assists, 6 turnovers. Other Johnson, Vance Johnson had 11 and 9. Hillsman 3 of 16 shooting, 9 points, 10 rebounds. Crandall had 32 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists, 5 steals, and 1 turnover for a 40 index rating. That's the best efficiency rating that the Leicester player has
very few complaints to the ref.
Yeah,
very few. He's clearly locked in, just like Reece was.
Best index rating for or efficiency rating rather than index.
I
haven't got index going back that far. Since Aaron Hardy in 2012 when he had 50 index rating. Whelan 18, Loving 15. They were both 6 of 10 shooting. Jackson was 5 of 7 shooting for 13 points. Nelson Henry was 6 of 6 shooting for 13 points. Leicester shot 55% from field goal range, 54% from 3-point range, and 80% from the free throw line.
Still not 72%.
I knew you were going to go there. Yeah. So let's go to Sunday, second leg. London Lions 91, Bristol Flyers 73, which means the Lions win 176-156 on aggregate. Dirk Williams, we talked about the starting lineup. Dirk Williams into the starting lineup.
They got it half right.
Yeah, so they had Reece, Dirk, Kujini, Washburn, and Tawiah, and that starting 5 is one that they've only ran once this season, which was the TV game against Leicester at the Copper Box, if you remember, the one where they had the fourth quarter meltdown and Leicester ran away with it.
Yeah, so they didn't score for ages.
So again, Flyers started well, 8-2 out after 2.5 minutes. Lions leveled it up at the midpoint. That's pretty much how the game played out from there, just like little mini runs.
Well, then as soon as Kelly came in, they got a lob for a dunk. Remember that?
Yeah,
I think every time Kelly comes in the game, they get a lob for a dunk, or 2 dunks, or a block shot, or something. They had something which kind of more closely kind of resembled a rotation in this game, I thought, London. But it's getting a bit late in the season to be getting to that. You still need to start Kelly, start the best 5 players, and then fit everybody else in where you can. Particularly moving forward in the big game next week, because if they start badly next week, they're done. And if you're not going to put your best 5 guys with your best unit on the court to start the game, you're taking a heck of a risk. Bristol came out again, full of energy, full of shooting. Particularly on Jacob. Which game am I talking about? I think it was.
No, it was the other game.
The other game, Jacob. It was
Sorry, not Jacob. I thought you were Rogers. Yes, Jacob. It was Jacob.
Jacob in this game, wasn't he? Who got going and got like 15 points off the bench or something silly, and kind of kept them in it. But there wasn't that much that was actually notable, other than the fact that Reece was again clearly locked in early on, and and dictating everything. And Reece gets a little bit of stick. Oh, he's not a point guard. He dribbles too much, etc. He has to dribble too. He has to dribble that much on that team. He has to be the creator on that team. He's a guy who needs a ball in his hands. He is kind of the James Harden, of the BBL. If you take the ball out of his hands, then you rely on that. He's not a spot-up shooter. He doesn't move particularly well without the ball. He likes to see the floor. He can throw the lob. He can spin the ball around. He can get to the rim. He is a mercurial player. So I don't criticize him for his high turnover rate, because if he has a high, if he shoots
and actually he was better in this game looking after the ball.
Yeah.
The only thing I thought was the technical, and I take it that it looked like a pretty quick technical that maybe wasn't really.
I think if you taunt somebody, I think it was a taunt.
Yeah.
Somebody, if you steal the ball, you make a three, and you turn around and you talk in somebody's face, and I'd call it technical. There's taunting. There's a difference between communicating with players and then taunting them, and there's a difference in the way that you do it. If he just backpedals and talks under his breath as he's backpedaling, that's one thing. Ref's gonna let that go. He turns and faces the guy, gives him some verbals, then which would probably not pass the 9 p.m. watershed. Then he's likely to get a tee. But
Keith is right there.
That was a different tee. That was a fired up. That was a fired up tee. That wasn't the worst tee in the world, No. The worst tee in the world are the petulant ones, where you're throwing the ball, or what he did with Harris, where he threw the ball at Harris in the Glasgow game, or you're waving your arms at the referee and stuff like that. You don't like them. The ones where the guys are in the flow of the game, it's like, okay, just don't get another one, please.
Yeah. So really, let's go forward a bit, because I thought the third quarter was a bit weird in that, like, Bristol couldn't get anything, turning the ball over. They couldn't get any easy shots, but London didn't seem to be pulling away despite that.
No, you just never know when London were going to put their foot down, do you? And you expect it to come. The reason because of the 3-point shooting. The 3-point shooting is such that you're just waiting for any moment. You get a couple of stops and get your shooters out there, space that court, and Dirk is eventually going to make one, and Kajini is going to make one. Bristol have kind of dried up a little bit, I thought. They didn't get any shooting from Thomas Edwards in this game, or Rogers, and that's been their and Simmons was pretty unimpactful, and their foul shooting was horrible. So you put all of that together, then you're asking to beat London without making many threes, right? And that's not easy, because eventually London are going to make some threes.
Yeah.
And it was a quarter too far for Bristol in relation to their depth to a certain degree, but also just their shot making. You've got to be able to run, but you've got to be able to make shots with London, and they couldn't.
So Dirk hit back-to-back threes in the third quarter. Washburn made one. It looked like they were going to go then, London, but Thomas Edwards had 6 in an 8-0 run, and that meant with 9:43 to go in the game, it's 60-57, so still the tie very much open. And then Dirk 3, Reece 3, Reece 3, Lions are 12 ahead. Flying Kelly dunk, another Reece 3, Dirk fast break dunk, game over.
But it's those guys, isn't it? It's their players.
Yeah. Well, it was the lineup, wasn't it?
To be fair, it's not John Williams, who's hardly played all since Christmas. It's not Ryan Martin. It's not Bradley Caboza. It's their guys. The players they've been there all year. They're the ones who kind of turned it on. And Reece, as I say, if he gets in the mood, he can light it up very quickly, and he can beat you in multiple ways. And when he's shooting that step back three, it's a very, very smooth shot. It's a shot which is very difficult to take away, because on the numbers, you would probably give him it if you'd challenge it, but you wouldn't be disappointed with him taking it. But he can make a few. He can make them in a row very quickly. He's a very dangerous player to have to guard. And once he did that, then once they had their spacing right, and Williams's threes and Kajini's threes, they come from the corners, they come from ball movement. They're the best threes. They're standstill threes, and they're the most valuable shot in the game. And they were able to get them at length. And Bristol just couldn't finish at the other end, and that feeds into London's fast break with all those shooters. Because the shooters run so wide down the court, that leaves Kelly flying down the middle as well. And if you're not all back, they're going to beat you one way or the other.
Well, Leicester had asked me a question, which I looked up on Sunday morning, about London's threes in the first leg, and London was 6 of 9 in transition threes in the first leg, which
that's brutal.
I haven't looked it up for the second leg, but I bet you it's something similar again. In the second.
And that's what blew the game, as you say. One run blew the game. So we were deprived of that exciting finish that we all wanted. Exciting finish in the game when it wasn't exciting.
No.
I comment.
So I've managed not to write down the stats here, so I'm just quickly looking at the old live stats. Reece had 28 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, 6 steals, and a 37 index. Dirk Williams 26 points, 6 of 11 from behind the arc, and Kyler Kelly 14.7 rebounds, and they've only given him 3 blocks. I'm sure he had more than that. Washburn had 13.6 rebounds, and he had 6 blocks. So they had at least 10 blocks, the Lions, in that. They were 14 of 37 from behind the arc. So another game where they've shot more threes than twos. But
those four players you talk about combined for 81 points out of how many? 91, is it?
Yeah.
81, 91, right? So this is that time of the season. The guys who are getting paid the big bucks, the guys who are the players, they have to be the ones making the plays. And it's rare that you're going to come into a situation in a final or in a semi-final where a role player makes a difference. It's who's together at the end of the game. And 81 points for those 4 players.
What was the kid, the point guard? Action Jackson.
Mark Jackson played for Thames Valley.
Tigers.
He was only playing because
of injury.
Casey Arena was hurt.
Casey Arena got injured.
Casey Arena got hurt, and he came in and he ran the team remarkably well. I think he ended up playing at Solent for a while as well. But Mark Jackson, I remember that. I remember watching him on the telly. But even that, he knocked down some threes.
Danny Lewis put him back in his place the next day.
That's right. The other thing is with that, young players, that's probably the best time because the opposition don't know who they are. And therefore they don't necessarily respect them to the degree that you want. And you don't know how you should be guarding them. So if he's got the cojones to knock shots down, you're going to be open. The question is, if he has got that cojones, why hasn't he been playing earlier? So you want to test him, and I remember that because that was a story at the time. I remember that really well.
He didn't have his name on the back of the shirt, and Sky got Billy Mims to print because Billy was doing the commentary, so he was going, he needs his name on the back of the shirt. So on the Sunday
wouldn't
morning,
have been hyping, would it?
It up.
Wouldn't have been hyping that.
Exactly. Let me do these other stats now while I've got this page up. So Jacob had 19.7 rebounds off the bench for the Flyers, 15 for Mike Miller, and 13 rebounds as well. Evans had 11 points, 5 of 12 shooting, and 7 turnovers. They were 4 of 24 from 3-point range and a horrendous 3 for 11 from the free throw line. Simmons was 0 of 4, Evans was 1 of 5.
Here's the crazy thing, if they make their foul shots, say they're 11 of 11, and they make 7 threes instead of 4, then you're looking at 18 points. 8 more fouls, 17 points. So that's the game. You have to be able to in big games. That's why shooting. Most valuable skill of them all. Don't matter how well you play, how hard you play, you've got to be able to put the ball in the basket. What's going on? London's coaching, I don't get it. This is just, it's getting to the point where I think something has to be addressed, because you're going to have a playoff final on Sunday and you've got the head coach who isn't taking the time out, and at times you had, Sky was cutting to Andreas, but wasn't really able to cut to London. I don't know, maybe you were, but but because, you know, the head coach is kind of standing out there looking like I used to do when I was perplexed about what was going on as well. You know, leaning over the bench, and they've got a guy on the bench who clearly is calling the timeout and clearly is running the plays, and nobody knows who he is, and he's not talked about, he's not been announced. We don't know, you know, it's just, I think it looks a bit bush league, to be honest. It was taking us back to the Plymouth Dorman bouncer, Johnny White or Jimmy, whatever. Johnny White, yeah, Darryl Cole, that was mate.
Yeah, Johnny White.
Came over, did a fantastic pre-game trophy final interview with you, whereby he basically said, well, if we get some calls, we may have a chance. Then proceeded to get beat by 45. Plymouth playing in Glasgow, all those fans go up there to watch him get beat by 45. And it turned out he was never a basketball coach in the first place. He was a doorman. I'm not saying the London guy is a doorman. He's clearly not. He clearly seems to know what he's doing with what he's drawing up. But it would be nice for somebody to actually explain what the heck is going on, because I don't think it's very fair on Nick Lowry, the coach, to be fronting up for all of this. But you know, there's nothing secret about it. Everybody sees what's going on there. The fans know. You know, it's all over the internet and all of that stuff. And there's a serious point, because we have rules and we have regulations in relation to foreign people and foreign imports in the game, and who can be involved in the professional game and who can't. And if you're a player, just so everybody understands, even if you're not getting paid, if you're a foreign player playing in the BBL, that's professional, even if you're not getting a penny. So that means you have to have the documentation, you have to have a visa to do that. That's even if you're not getting a penny. And it's in the same, really should be the case for coaches. And it is the same is the case for coaches. So I think the league needs to address something. I don't care if he wants to be the coach. I don't mind him being the coach, fine. But I don't like the idea that, you know, we're 8 weeks in now or whatever it is, and nobody knows formally who this person is or what they're doing. That's just my 2 pence on that. So it'll go nowhere, because the Johnny White thing never went anywhere until he went back to Australia. But I do think it's, you know, it's all those little standards things that we talk about without trying to sound too bullish in relation to the BBL and all the good things that happen. There are little things that happen that shouldn't. You know, little things that we can be so much better at. We've talked about a few of them over the season, and this is just another one, I think.
Indeed. Right. Let's move on to the Monday night game. Glasgow against Leicester. Leicester Riders 104, Glasgow Rocks 78. Riders win 209 to 162 on aggregate. Obviously, nobody's ever come back from 21 points down on aggregate in the first leg to win the game, but we were giving it the best sell we could about Glasgow winning on the road by 24 the week before, and Gareth Murray comes out and knocks down a 3 on the first play, and we're all like, here we go.
Yeah, you were excited, weren't you?
Yeah, we were trying. And then Crandall hits one back, Whelan hits one back, Glasgow jacking threes. Leicester scores 17 unanswered points, and they are 17-3 up after 3.5 minutes. And it was a hard sell after that.
I bet it was. Yeah, and I was really quite wound up about this, because, you know, you're right in what you say. You know, you take your team down there and say, okay, we're going to give it a shot, you know, and to give it a shot, what we have to do, we got to stay close. You got to maybe do it in increments. They're going to have runs as well. Our runs just have to be a little bit more than them. We have to play some defense. We have to hold them at 75, 80 points to have any type of shot. But we're going to give it a go, guys. Leave it all on the floor, right? I thought they played the first quarter like they were on the plane. Yeah, you know, maybe they all thought they had the green light because the coach chucked up a 3 with the first shot of the game. So coach can shoot, I can shoot. So they all shot and they all missed. What annoyed me beyond contemplation was the fact that, you know, that 9-0 run, they didn't call a timeout, because that game is in the process of being won literally 4 minutes into the first quarter. Right, that is the tie is being won. The tie, whatever people think, 21 down, even if 21 down, the tie is not won. Right, each basketball game has its own intricacies. It has its own peaks and flows. Certain things can happen. Players can you can get into players' heads. People can have meltdowns, whatever. right?
Plymouth was 16 points up in the second leg in the third quarter last week.
Absolutely. You know, look, and we played a game at Worcester where we were up 20 after the first leg and we won in overtime. You know, and that was the second leg was at Worcester, but even so, it doesn't matter. The game is there, and momentum in a basketball game is a very funny thing, right? So if you're coming out of the blocks as Glasgow in that game, you're thinking, right, we are going to deny Leicester any momentum. We're going to niggle away at them. We're going to make enough shots to make it a scrappy type of game. And if there's any chance that they're going to get, we can't afford to give up runs to them. We just cannot afford to give up any form of meaningful run. So you've got to micromanage the game in relation to that to stop that happening, right? 17-0, no timeout. I'm like, what? You just like, what? We're just not interested in what? You know, I mean, 2 threes, probably 8-3. You've chucked up 2 bad shots already, 2 bad threes on the wing. That's a timeout. That's like saying, right, guys, are we going to play? Are we going to go home? And nothing. And by the time it's 17-3, well, that's it. You know, chuck it. That's what, 21, 35 points? 35 points in 30 minutes in 33 minutes against Leicester. That's not going to happen. Everybody knew that. And I just, they're a very young team in the way that they appear, Glasgow, at times. You take out Johnny Bunyan and Gareth Murray, the way some of the mind, I think the mindset has been questioned. The talent is there. The mindset has been questionable in some of those games this season. And I just thought with them, but a young team, you've got to micromanage them. You've really got to drill into them. You've got to use every opportunity you can to kind of cut the game into bits to try and just find units that are going to work. And instead you've got Johnson had 3 fouls in like 4 minutes. Hillsman's got fouls. And, they're all frustrated, but they're all frustrated for the wrong reasons, And I just thought they haven't, other than that game at Sheffield where they showed up and they benefited from Sheffield's injuries. I think in the playoffs they played like a 7th place team, and I know the game went on, and you talk about how they come back and they make a run, and Leicester's bench wasn't great.
There's not a huge amount to talk about. I would like to mention Jack Domney and Fraser Malcolm.
Yes, absolutely.
And the way they played, particularly in the second quarter, I thought they were really good.
Yeah, well, I mean, Malcolm is, he's a very kind of hot, icy cold type of guy. You look at a box score, he's got no points in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You look at another box score, he's got 25 and 20, He's really, and the biggest thing for a young player actually isn't kind of that consistency of being, 6 and 5 every game. It's having the ability to go for 25. If you've got the ability to go for that, like he has, you can go up a notch, right? You're not just going to settle into a specific role and be the kind of the British young kid who everybody turns around and realizes is now 31 years old and still the same player he once was, right? And we've seen plenty of them, right? So he's now in a position where he can, he can literally say, well, look, I'm capable of starting in this league and producing, which is more important than the fact that he's starting. Jack Domney is exactly the same. I mean, his season, if he did a graph of his season, the peaks and troughs, that would be incredible, because there's some games he hasn't played a minute or 2 minutes, or he's got 3 fouls in like 30 seconds or something, and you don't see him again. Ali Fraser's playing like 39 minutes, 30 seconds. And then there are other games where you give him the ball, he's literally unstoppable in the low block. He can go right, he can go left, he can score on anybody. He looks like, one of the smooth, it sounds absolutely heretical to say this, but some of the moves he's pulling, are like, it's like Leonard Stewart. I'm watching Leonard post work, he's pulling it, right hand, left hand, whatever, fake, up and under. He's got all those moves, but he's never been able to put it together. Now, this is where you say, well, actually, maybe if we call a timeout at 8-3 instead of 17-3, and we put those guys in the game because we realize where things are going, maybe we get up 5 or 6 in the game. Maybe that just impacts just a little bit on Leicester's mentality. No, the answer is it probably wouldn't. But, you could have done this. You got your 2 guys off the bench who've showed up to play. Yeah. And your Americans haven't. Yeah. But by the time you've given them a chance to play, it's too late. But you're right about them, because I'm slightly higher on Malcolm than I am on Jack Domney, because Jack Domney is just so inconsistent. But they played hard, they competed, and they did what you would expect. And that's not what you could say for kind of all of rocks. And full disclosure, second half, I watched Ozark. Sorry, it's episode 12. Only got 2 to go now.
Yeah.
Because I was done with it.
Yeah.
You know, kept a quick look at the Statcast at one point just to make sure I wasn't making a horrendous mistake. But I wasn't. Because you know, you give up 210 or 200 and however many points in a 2-legged game, then you know, what chance have we got?
Well, the bit that you missed was Leicester going out to double figures with Loving and Whelan hitting threes early in the third, Malcolm dragging it back to a 6-point game, and then Connor Washington torching them in the fourth quarter to make it a very, very comfortable.
But here's the thing, right, Dan? If you talk about eyes on the game and that, right? That had been the best of 3. I might have watched to the end of the third quarter. You know, I might have watched a bit longer because there's some jeopardy in the game. I don't think
I suppose the question would be is if it was the best.
Would it be the same?
3,
yeah. Would not be 30-point game at half time. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's entirely feasible. I get that. But you know, these are professional players, so who knows? I don't think the 2 semi-finals have been the greatest advert for the format that we've got, if I'm honest. I know that depends on. It can be both. It can go both ways.
I would also say one of the semi-finals was a demonstration of why we've got the format that we've got.
Because of the venues.
Glasgow had no venue, and the only reason we were able to play that game was because Leicester, who were scheduled to play on Saturday night, offered to move their game to Monday because they could. The only time Glasgow could get that venue was at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, which is
but if it'd been a 3-legged game, Leicester play Thursday at home, Glasgow on Saturday, and then Leicester on Monday.
potentially, yeah.
I'm just saying. I'll say if you have to be creative with solutions, sometimes you got, and I get that it's very, very difficult to be creative with solutions. It's probably a problem that the people in the league office don't really want to have, and all they've got is me and like 3 other slightly mad.
I think that's more than
talking
than that.
about.
I mean, I'm with you in that I would rather see a best of 3, but I also understand the challenges of what that is, and might Leicester have cost themselves financially there in that they've got more people in on Saturday night than they did on Monday night.
They would, I'm sure that's true. And of course, we have to remember. I mean, it was a local election, so in Glasgow, so it's a pretty much of a one-off situation. So I get it, but I just think that at times we see problems as insuperable when they're not necessarily insuperable. They just need a little bit more creative thinking. And I'm not saying that involves it doesn't mean that these 3 games have to be played out this weekend. Maybe you had a week, all you need is to add one more week to the playoff series, to give yourself one more week to give you that middle game if you need it, to give you that flexibility. And
I completely agree with that. And also it's that thing of actually these dates should be locked in September.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Yeah, it's tough because there's not that many teams who are necessarily going to get home. Well, everybody's going to get a home game in the playoffs at the moment. Yeah, true. Yes, everybody should have. That should be one. Everybody should have a home quarter-final playoff date, really, because that's 8 out of the 10 teams are going to need them.
Yeah.
But
then why shouldn't they book in a home semi-final? Because you're saying we're going to lose.
That's when we well, I agree, because the other thing is if you're doing the best of 3, your home semi-final date, it can be your 3rd leg date if you need it, of the first tournament, the first round.
But the team that gets through, and then you get into that whole seeding thing, which I don't see.
which is another thing, which well, anyway, it would be nice for people to say this is something hard and it might go wrong, but we're going to give it a shot if people like it. That's what
my sense of it is they were going to do it. I can't believe they're not going back to it at some point. I would not be surprised to see best of 3 next year, and I have no insider knowledge as I say that.
Well, we had no other than the I'm trying to think, in the quarterfinal we had the Bristol Manchester was a great finish.
Yeah.
But the other 3 really weren't. Cheshire and London would probably have gone to a 3rd game under the basis of what we saw, but there wasn't much. The 4 quarters of every second leg, it was 5 out of the 6 quarterfinal quarterfinal, semi-final, 5 of the 6 fourth quarters have been pretty dead. You know, Cheshire kind of had a shot against London, but they'd kind of gone by then. Everything else was just about done. You know, maybe Glasgow and Sheffield. Glasgow pulled away about then, but last 5 minutes. The last 5 minutes was only one game, which was interesting. The last 5 minutes, and that's where I enjoy the most, because that's when you get to see people make decisions under pressure, and that's what tests the coaches out, and it tests the players out, and it tests the mentality of the players out. And we didn't really see that this year. So from a pure basketball perspective, I'm a little bit disappointed. But then again, I'm also slightly biased because my guys aren't in it. So, so it's easy for me to say, you're all rubbish. You're all rubbish.
It'd be much better if Newcastle
not watching it at all. Oh, no, don't bother with that. It's only the regular season that matters when we're not anything else. It's difficult. Look, Leicester had a great year in relation to what they've done, but that's self-evident. But their consistency is unmatched. I think I've said before, they're probably a once in a 5 or 6 year team in the BBL. I think you see a team like this once every 5 or 6 years. They've been assisted a little bit by the inability of anybody else to be, remotely cohesive for an entire season. But that actually emphasizes how difficult it is to do what they do. To be that, so whilst it assists them, it also it separates them, so you have to give them credit for that as well. And it's and what it comes down to is acceptance of rules and specific targets being set, and they have an expectation of winning the league, and I'm not sure that anybody else had that expectation. And the problem, and what that does is that then leads you into confidence. It leads you into focus, into targets. It keeps you going throughout the season. And let's be blunt. Glasgow can tweet it and say, "Oh well, our guys left it on the floor." Look, they beat you by 50. They beat you by 50 over 2 legs. It's not, it's nothing to be particularly proud about. It can happen. They're better than you. That's the reality. They're better than most teams. London is the one team that may not be better than on a pure talent level. On everything else, Leicester are miles ahead. Now the question is, can London keep it together mentally? Are they going to be? Is their leadership going to be good enough?
Let me just give the scores out before we go.
I'm right. My fault.
Crandall 22 points and 8 assists. Washington 20 points in 18 minutes. Loving 14, 5 of 7. Whelan 13, 5 of 8 shooting. Malcolm was 7 of 11 shooting for 17 points and 6 rebounds. Jordan Johnson 5 of 14 for 16. Harris had 14. And I gave the stat out, and in case you missed it, Leicester since 2016 are 21 wins now, 1 draw and 1 loss. And we just need to establish whether it's correlation or causation that Rowe retired and then they went 21.
No, I did miss that bit. Marty Bird was punching somebody. Since Rowe went, I can see, the old addition by subtraction kicking in. See.
Could be.
Do
some more research on that.
He was blown a bit by the end, wasn't he? From memory, he's in better shape now than he was then.
So final next week. We all knew at the beginning of the season it was going to be Leicester against London, didn't we? It was obvious all the way through. We all had that one covered. No, I mean it's funny because you would have at the beginning of the year you'd have got pretty short odds on Leicester against London in the playoff final, but Leicester took the Roman road route, and London went round the houses, but they got there. That's the important thing.
Saratov and other places as well, and Serbia and all sorts of places. Yeah, they did. They went around the houses. They went, they lost a few personnel on the way, and gained a few. Created enough, controversy to kind of sustain a Netflix series for at least 3 episodes. Sadly, I don't imagine there is one. It would be fun to watch, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
How did you miss that?
It's true.
How did you miss the Netflix? I mean, that was, we had the kind of the tip of the iceberg with the London City Royals and the time. We had all those videos, and great. I enjoyed that one. I enjoyed that series tremendously, particularly the one of the 50-point loss in Newcastle. And so we had the beginning of that. and we missed the Netflix drama that was the London Lions. So yeah, but all that matters is where they are now.
Yeah.
And you know, if London played.
Here's the question for you then.
London played Leicester really tough.
Yeah. Here's the question for you. If these two teams play 10 times, Leicester win how many? London win how many?
It depends, because London are 3 different teams, aren't they? So these teams are ready at the moment.
But on
as they are at the moment.
Yeah.
As they're constituted at the moment.
Yeah.
Leicester win 7 out of 10. Because their consistency. You know, they win a series, no question, because their consistency, because they have Crandall to step up and make plays, who's more ready and more practiced at that in his second year than Reece is in his first year. Now, Crandall and Reece have actually had seasons which aren't diametrically opposite. You know, they're not that far apart in the way they are, because they've both had peaks and troughs this year. They've both had times whereby they've, you know, you look like they're both unguardable, and not just the best player in the league, but the best player who's, you know, for multiple years in the league. But they've also had times whereby, you know, they've been a bit flaky, got into arguments, technicals, stupidity, that type of stuff. The difference, of course, has been the structure that Crandall has around him, as opposed to the structure that Reece has around him. You know, and Reece has the kind of the cornucopia of moving pieces on the cinema screen, whereas Crandall has everybody absolutely set, focused, keeping, you know, there's nothing which causes any uncertainty to him. So Leicester being able to sustain that, despite the fact that they started with only 3-point guards, whereas London had 4. Leicester are using all 3. London are down to 1. So 7 out of 10 for Leicester, but that does not mean that London, if they
one
get
of
out
the
of
3 is this Sunday, then London win the title.
If London make a ton of shots, then they have a chance. But they have to get out. They have to get stops, right? And they have to get out in transition, because they're not going to make a ton of threes against Leicester's half-court defense. That is not going to happen, because Leicester are too long. Loving, Jackson, Whelan, Crandall, too long in the and they have Connor to throw it, Reece to tire him out as well. Too long on the perimeter to let Dirk Williams stand there and shoot threes in the corner. Right now, this is why minutes become so vital. You can't waste a minute in the playoff final. The first 5 minutes are absolutely crucial. You know, Kelly has to play 30 minutes in this game, probably 32 minutes, I think. You know, and then they got to decide whether they go with Martin or Williams or Tawiah.
Because the interesting thing is, and I might be wrong on this, but my suspicion is the first time they moved Kelly out of the starting lineup was against Leicester. Yeah. Because I think at the time, Nelson Henry was coming off the bench and Walker was starting. And Walker, on a couple of times, just went bang, bang, sit down, mate. You got 2 fouls after 2 minutes.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I remember that, because I rather think they out kind of coached themselves with that one. I think because, you know, they made the adjustment, but that wasn't the way that London were. That wasn't the way that Leicester were going. You know, because the Tawiah.
That was the game we talked about earlier, was the one where Tawiah was in the lineup, and I think that was the change, because Leicester had beaten them. Was it in the cup semi-final a few weeks beforehand? Or 2 weeks?
In theory, Tawiah is a matchup from Walker, but you know, you give up so much offensively, you know, in relation to your spacing for everything else. And ultimately, Kelly's your starting centre, so he's got to be able to guard these guys. Now, now he may not be able to, and Walker goes 8 for 10, and he has to come out of the game, and that's a problem. But he has to play. You know, I don't see how they can create.
No, I agree, but
offensively,
in some ways, against Leicester I can see why you're trying not to get me in foul trouble, but I 100% agree with you. What you're doing is you're de facto getting yourself, sitting on the bench with no foul trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got to decide who do you use to guard Crandall, and you've got 2 guys who they've used outside of the guards, which is Washburn and Ward Hibbert. Ward Hibbert played a very weird 40 seconds on Friday night. You know, that was also very weird. When they ever came in for a minute and a half, didn't mention it when we're doing the game, Ward Hibbert came in for 40 seconds. I'm like, really? You know, if you're going to play in a playoff semi-final, you're a player, you know? You're not someone coming in to play 40 seconds. That doesn't do anybody any good. It's not fair on the player. And, you know, it might be one possession which costs you the game, you know? if he's worth it being in the rotation. But they've got him, who's got the athleticism and the length and the mindset to potentially have a go at slowing Crandall down. And they've got Washburn, and for me, it's Washburn the whole time. I'm just like, I'm on Julian Washburn train. You put him on your best player because he doesn't need the ball offensively. You can ask him to tire himself out defensively and make it as hard as you can. Because the only way I think they can handle Leicester is if they deal with the point of attack, and that's Gino. And then if they can deal with Gino and limit him, then it becomes a 3-point shooting contest between everybody else, and London have to have a shot at that.
Again, my recollection of the early season is that's what Vince tried to do, and Washburn kept getting into foul trouble in the...
A little bit, but I think he was a little bit over aggressive at times. He did that in the third quarter of one of the games, but there was that game where they came back, and I think it was 97-96 to Leicester at the end, and or 99-96 because London gave away a couple of points on the foul line when they shouldn't have in the cup first leg. But they remain, they kind of, I think it was last year that was something similar. London beat Leicester at least on one occasion when Gino had to play big minutes, and London, I think, probably threw water bit at him at that point and did that.
Might have been Liggins, was it?
Liggins, it may have been Liggins water bit, yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure they can do it. I'm not sure. I don't think they're disciplined enough to survive against Leicester over 40 minutes. I don't think it'll come down to talent. I think it'll come down to discipline. But Cugini, Williams, Rees scare me as a coach. They scare me because it doesn't take much. If Kelly gets a couple of block shots and they get out in transition, and in the final they start knocking shots down, and it's the O2, so it's a nice arena for basketball. It's not the old Wembley arena. It seats 3,000 miles backwards, and it was all very weird. The O2 is a really nice place to play. It's a proper, basically an NBA arena, slightly smaller, but an NBA arena. And they start knocking down shots in there. With the London crowd behind them, they of course have a shot. What scares me more is that you'll get a situation where Williams and Cugini don't share a minute together in the first half because of the way, because of the rotations, because they're throwing bodies in. That as I say, that first half at Bristol, you've got Jordan Williams playing 5 minutes, you've got Kabuza playing 3 minutes, you've got Water playing a minute, you got Martin playing 6 minutes, you got Kelly playing 10 minutes. It's not going to work. You're not going to beat this Leicester team with depth. You got to beat them with your talent, and you're going to have to be sharp in relation to your rotations. Some guys are going to have to play less, and you got to make that decision, because we saw it in the cup final. When Manchester went to their bench, Leicester destroyed them. And Manchester, probably looking back, would probably say, yeah, we should have kept Armstrong in the game for longer. We should have kept our starters in the game. Maybe kept Dan Clark in the game for longer in the first quarter after he made a few threes. You can't mess around. And the difference, of course, is that we've got, a rookie coach on one side, or a rookie anonymous coach, we don't know. And we got, Rob on the other side, whose record in finals is dominant. And part of that is because I'm not there anymore on the other side. No, sorry, that is incredibly arrogant. That's not right. It was all fun. He doesn't listen to me anymore. He wouldn't even listen to the podcast anymore. He's got far too many things to do. No, part of that is because he's been through it all. So he knows that if Connor Washington is shutting down somebody, Connor's going to keep playing. You're not going to take him out because of you've got a rotation, you've got to put somebody else in. He knows that if he can only give Kimber McKenzie 7 minutes, Kimber McKenzie's going to be fine with that, because he's been bought into that all season. They're doing whatever it takes to make the team win. Now, are the London guys as confident in relation to their guys? Are they willing to make those decisions in relation to how you win the next possession? Because finals come down to winning the next possession, not in the next quarter, not trying to stay close until the end. At some point in a final, the team cracks. That's why you don't get that many close finals. Because the team cracks because of the pressure of it. The fact that they're losing means that when I say crack, they take less than optimal shots. They play the speed that they wouldn't otherwise do. They make defensive mistakes, reaching for steals. Everything is more urgent in a final, and kind of having the team that has the self-confidence, or the confidence in itself, to remain focused in what it does. That's the team that generally wins. And I think London have that with about 6 players. Those guys have been together all season. They have that you saw in the fourth quarter against Bristol, but they don't have that with the extra guys who've come in, who played for half a season, who've been injured or whatever. You know, and that kind of happened. That was something that happened in the trophy final. Leicester have got that through everybody. So are London going to match their 7 against Leicester's 9, or are London going to try and match 10 against 9? Because if they match 10 against 9, then I don't think they've got a prayer. So he says, fully expecting to be entirely wrong.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what it is. But no, that was my mindset. So we'll see.
Well, we will see indeed. There's a couple of games left. We'll chat over the WBBL playoff final as well, I'm sure, next
Seven
week.
Oaks. Is it London Seven Oaks?
Yeah.
Oh, at least it'll be. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. That dance before. Yeah.
Programming note and doing our production meeting Monday night. All right for you next week?
Well, I don't know, you know, because I mean, tonight is normally my Better Call Saul night, because that's out on Mondays, and obviously it's a Raw yesterday. And unfortunately, the wife's gone out on the drink, so I know she's gone out on the drink because she said she's got her keys before she left, which means that you know, which is the code. So I can't even watch that, because if I watch that without her, she will, you know, that is the end of my liberty for a while. So, but Monday night, yeah, should be all right. We've done those out by then, and have cogitated on the final a little bit, and I think I might do a little bit of kind of a breakdown on the TV commentary next week as well.
Nice, yeah. Look forward to that.
Because I think last day's got off a bit easy, and I mean, he comes out with a lot of stuff that I told him, you know, and comes across with it like it's his own. You know, I'm not impressed. No, he doesn't. To be fair, that you guys have done an awesome job. I hope they're going to keep going. I don't know. I'm sure you can't tell us, but I hope it's going to keep going, because I think the production stuff and the knowledge of the BBL is something that's really valued in the way that you guys are talking. And obviously, if you want to feed in your talking point from this podcast, you're more than welcome.
Right, so we'll park it there. Make sure you do catch all the action on Sky Sports. I think it's on YouTube as well. If you're not a subscriber, you can watch it there. Dave and I will be back, as we say, next Monday night to break it all down for the final time this season. But for now, have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.